So Sony's Xperia 5 Mark II smartphone was one of my favourite things to emerge in 2020, although admittedly given that it was competing against murder viruses, horrific bushfires, and basically the entire planet losing its shit, that's probably not actually particularly stunning praise. But now the sequel to that Xperia phone, unsurprisingly called the Sony Xperia 5 Mark III, is about to hit the UK, starting from 900 quid. And yeah, 2021 hasn't exactly been much of an upgrade over 2020, but can Sony once again provide one of the year's highlights in gloriously skinny smartphone form? Well, as usual, I've had my Sims stuck right in here for the past week or so. I've been using it as my personal smartphone, so here is my in-depth Sony Xperia 5 Mark III review so you can see if it's right for you. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, no real fresh thoughts to share on the design of the Xperia 5 Mark III beyond the fact that it is proven about as hardy as expected after a week of being banged about the place. You've got a good bit of Gorilla Glass 6 front and back, so the Xperia 5 Mark III proven nice and durable there, no scratches and scuffs to speak of. And as always, you've got that IP68 water and dust resistance as well, so you can recline in a nice hot bubbly bath with a lovely bit of 1970s hardcore Dutch porno. No wait, did I say 1970s hardcore Dutch porno? What I meant was Last of the Summer Wine. And this black model of the Xperia 5 Mark III is perhaps the least interesting of the three colours on offer, but it still looks very smart indeed, suiting that premium asking price. And this is definitely still one of the most comfortable to wield compact style phones that you can grab in 2021, complete with the nifty one-handed mode for those awkward moments where you need to poke something that's housed right up near the top of that very tall display. And that's just one of a handful of very pleasant bonus features that Sony has sticky taped on top of Android 11 courtesy of that Xperia UI. You've still got a near stock Android vibe with a few flourishes and style tweaks to give the Xperia 5 Mark III a distinctive Sony finish. And everything runs smoothly and looks bright and cheery. And I've got to say I quite like it, though sadly Sony hasn't gone balls deep when it comes to security and OS update promises. You see some rivals like OnePlus and Nokia and even Samsung these days, they offer generally around sort of 3 years of security and OS updates now, whereas sadly Sony is only promising a couple here on the Xperia 5 Mark III. And yeah, there are definitely some irritations with Xperia UI, so for instance Sony has pre-installed a couple of apps without your permission like LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can't just get rid of them nice and easily as you can on some other smartphones. You've got to do some jiggery pokery to get them to sling their hook. Thankfully though, even if you do decide to just leave them on there because you can't be bothered with all of the faff and hassle, the good news is you've got plenty of storage on here, minimum of 128 gigs. You can double that if you've got a bit of extra cash lying around as well. And you do have micro SD memory card support as well, which is a feature that's actually not too common amongst a lot of premium priced flagship smartphones. And yeah, there's no face unlock support here as usual, but the edge mounted fingerprint sensor does work a treat, and only when my mitts were proper moist did it refuse to function. So minor gripage aside, I did really enjoy the Sony software experience here on the Xperia 5 Mark III, and I've only covered a handful of the bonus features chucked on here as well. There are plenty more as well, which I will cover throughout the rest of this review. Now Sony's 6.1-inch OLED display is definitely one of the major highlights here, pumping out dazzling Full HD Plus images with crisp clean whites and seriously deep blacks. This thing was made for watching movies with HDR support when you're streaming your favourite flicks, and a notch-free full view design so you can see 100% of that action. All of the usual Sony software enhancements are on hand to upscale those visuals, including Sony's creator mode and that X1 upscaling that successfully improves the clarity of crappy old content. While other flagships serve up gorgeous displays, the Xperia phones can't be touched for sheer customization and software smarts. The Xperia 5 Mark III is definitely one for cinephiles, although you do get some serious pillar boxing with older 3x4 shows. And I only saw a little bit of green tinting when I was watching content in the dark, had the screen brightness scaled all the way back, so it was definitely an improvement here on the Xperia 5 Mark III compared with what I saw with that Xperia 1 Mark III flagship. And yes, you do of course have 120Hz refresh here on the Xperia 5 Mark III as well, same as last year's Xperia 5 Mark II, and that's what helps to keep that UI running super buttery smooth, and it's also great news for gaming. Yeah, the Xperia 5 Mark III's stereo speaker setup ain't particularly thrilling. Sadly, the audio is a bit tinny at that top volume and it's no match for the flagship. Plus, I don't really think that the speaker's supposed support for 360 reality audio actually adds anything to the experience, at least not to my buggered old lugs. However, chuck on a pair of headphones and it is a very different story indeed. If you've got a decent pair of cans, you'll be able to enjoy spooge-worthy high-res audio tracks via the 3.5mm headphone jack, which is a feature, again, you don't find on a lot of premium price smartphones. I'm talking crystal clear, highly detailed sound here, absolutely perfect for any audiophiles. I also found that the Bluetooth support was absolutely impeccable as well. If you've got a pair of LDAC supported headphones like Sony's own WHs, well, again, you'll have some beefy audio blasted right into your lug holes. I found that wireless range was very impressive indeed, and if you dive into the audio settings on the Xperia 5 Mark III, you can scale the performance versus the stability to suit how busy the environment is. Make sure you don't get any awkward juddering or anything like that. Just a quick note on the haptics on the Xperia 5 Mark III though, certainly the motor built into my sample felt like it was a little bit knackered out. I was really struggling to recreate the really strong rumbles, so hopefully that's just a problem that was limited to my sample and not the final retail version. Now, as you'd expect from a very expensive Sony smartphone, you've got a good bit of Snapdragon 888 power with 8 gigs of RAM in backup. Some proper tasty specs indeed, and certainly the everyday performance here on the Xperia 5 Mark III was absolutely fine, although it's not all good news because I did notice that this smartphone got rather toasty even after just say 20 minutes to half an hour of browsing the web and general messaging and such forth. Thankfully it didn't get to the point where the Xperia, would start acting funky or try to hibernate itself, start shutting down apps, anything like that. But when I stopped using it, I did occasionally just let it cool off for a few seconds before slipping it back into my jeans pocket so it didn't toast my marshmallows. Likewise, gaming made this handset heat up pretty fast, but again it never proved too hot to handle even when the phone was plugged in, thanks to that excellent Sony HS Power Control mode, which stops the battery from charging during gameplay. You can blaze through whatever you like on here, including the most demanding Android fare like Genshin Impact. That 21:9 display means a widescreen, uninhibited view of the action. Definitely a massive bonus when you're gaming online the likes of Call of Duty. And you've got that extensive range of gamer features and tools that really help to give you the edge over whatever teenage miscreants you're doing battle with. Considering Sony's gamer mode is one of the freshest ones out there, it's already one of the best as well, or certainly it's at least one of my favourites, offering full customization over the audio and visual output, and also some impressive screen recording tools. You can also fine-tune the screen sensitivity, although even so, I did find that the Xperia 5 Mark III suffered from the same problem as that flagship phone. Poking tiny on-screen buttons can sometimes take a few goes, which is particularly perturbing in the heat of battle. And despite its more compact form factor, the Xperia 5 Mark III is a match for the flagship smartphone when it comes to the battery capacity. It's once again a 4500 mAh cell packed in there. And this once again gives pretty respectable returns. You can expect around sort of 6 hours of screen on time with a good bit of audio streaming in the background as well from a full charge before the battery is completely wiped dry. Generally I would make it through a full day, no worries whatsoever. The only time when I struggled was when I was up early morning, out all day, not back until the evening and leaning on it fairly heavy. As for power and backup, well, it's 30-watt wide charging support here on the Xperia 5 Mark III, not particularly dazzling considering that sky-high price point. Even more worrying though is the fact that you don't have any wireless charging support on here, which is a real shame, something that you will find on most of the rivals at this sort of asking cost. Now, the optics here are basically the exact same as what you get with Sony's flagship phone, except that the time of flight lens has been culled so you don't get the same real-time object tracking. However, if you find you spend most of your time snapping people instead of just things, well, no worries then, because Sony's real-time eye autofocus is back in action here, and it ensures that your family photos will look proper lush. Yeah, you will still encounter some blurry shots if your whippersnapper likes to leap about like a pissed up squirrel, but Sony's 20 frames per second burst shooting mode helps to counter this, while the bokeh tool produces some slick looking portrait snaps. As for the rest of the camera setup, well, it is basically the same as that Sony Xperia 1 Mark III flagship smartphone, so I won't dive into too much detail here in this review. Go check out my full Sony Xperia 1 Mark III review for my full diagnosis. But suffice to say that you can get some great looking snaps with that 24mm primary lens with optical image stabilization, even on the bog standard auto mode, as long as you don't try shooting in crazy contrast or very low light, that is. In those cases, you'll most definitely want to swap to the program modes, which is where the Xperia Mark III phones really set themselves apart from the competition. Here you've got full DSLR-style controls, so you can counter any troublesome glare or a complete lack of light rather ably. And to be fair, despite a lack of a dedicated night mode, the Xperia can still capture some good looking low light shots with just a little effort. As well as that primary lens, you've also got a 16mm ultra wide angle effort, which produces some quite natural colour results, again just like the primary shooter. And last up, you've got a telephoto lens, which can swap between 70 and 105mm focal lengths, again with image stabilization built in. And this helps you dive in really nice and close to distant subjects, perfect for touristy shots, nature snaps, things like that. As for your home movies, well, again, the Sony Xperia 5 Mark III isn't quite as good as the likes of a Samsung Galaxy S21 when it comes to shooting home movies, but on the whole you'll get some very good looking footage indeed with some strong image stabilization. If you bump up to 4K resolution, you get plenty of detail packed into every frame, and the audio capture is nice and clear as well. And yes, once again, you do have that Cinema Pro mode as well if you want to get some very funky filtered effects. And this once again gives you full manual control over absolutely everything. It is an awful lot of fun to play around with, especially if you've ever had any kind of aspirations of being like an indie director or something. And last up, the 8-megapixel selfie camera is pretty basic as far as premium handsets go, once again struggling in stronger and weaker light. If you couldn't give a fine feathered about selfies like me, then fine. If you actually do give a shit, then I would say definitely look elsewhere. So alright, there's my full final frank review on the Sony Xperia 5 Mark III, and I gotta say it is a bit of a shame it doesn't really feel like much of an upgrade at all over last year's excellent Xperia 5 Mark II. While the Xperia 5 Mark II felt like a really premium, pretty much flawless smartphone, the Xperia 5 Mark III definitely had some little issues like the screen responsiveness and the fact that it used to heat up under duress. So I would have to say, if you are tempted by the excellent media chops, the camera, smarts, all that kind of shenanigans, well, definitely look to last year's model instead to save yourself a bit of cash. But anywho, that's my review. It'd be great to hear you guys' reactions down in the comments below. Have you pre-ordered one of these bad boys? Definitely be great to hear your thoughts on that as well. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a fan-bloody-tastic rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!